The Watchmakers, Symphony, Ravenswood, was a town cloaked in mist and mystery, where the past lingered in every shadow, and the weight of forgotten sins pressed upon the present. At its heart stood the unassuming workshop of Edgar Blackwood, a man whose reputation for crafting exquisite timepieces was matched only by the unease he inspired in those who crossed his path. The shop itself was a relic of a bygone era, filled with a faint aroma of old wood and oil, the gentle ticking of countless clocks creating a hypnotic symphony. Each clock, meticulously restored and maintained, seemed to possess a life of its own. Yet, it was Edgar's presence that cast the longest shadow. Clara Hastings, an artist seeking solace and inspiration, arrived in Ravenswood with little knowledge of its darker legends, and drawn by an inexplicable pull, she found herself standing before Blackwood's workshop on a rainy afternoon. The sign above the door, worn and withered, read, Blackwood & Co. Stepping inside, Clara was greeted by the sight of Edgar, hunched over his workbench, his fingers deftly manipulating the delicate innards of a grandfather clock. He looked up, his gaze piercing and unnervingly calm. "Welcome, Miss Hastings," he said, his voice a smooth baritone. "How may I assist you?" Clara hesitated, momentarily unnerved by the intensity of his gaze. I was just curious," she stammered. "Your clocks are beautiful." "Thank you," Edgar replied, his lips curling into a faint smile. "Each piece holds a story, a fragment of time captured in its gears. Would you like to see my latest creation?" Without waiting for an answer, he led Clara to a back room. Hidden behind a heavy velvet curtain, the air grew colder as they stepped inside. The walls lined with clocks of every shape and size, their tick-tocks a dissonant chorus. In the center of the room stood a glass display case, housing a clock unlike any Clara had ever seen. "This," Edgar said, "is the Clock of Shadows. It has the power to reveal the deepest fears of those who dare to gaze upon it. Would you care to try?" Clara felt a chill run down her spine, but nodded, unable to resist the allure of the clock's dark beauty. She stepped closer, her reflection distorted in the glass, and peered into the clock's face. In an instant the world around her dissolved. She found herself standing in a vast, empty void, the only sound, the relentless ticking of the clock. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, forming grotesque and twisted shapes. Whispers filled her ears, growing louder and more insistent, until they became a deafening roar. Scenes from her past flashed before her eyes. Memories she had long buried. Fears she had tried to forget. She saw her mother, lifeless and pale, reaching out to her with blood-stained hands. She heard the cries of children, their voices echoing in the darkness, and felt the icy grip of unseen fingers around her throat. As Clara's mind unraveled, Edgar watched with cold detachment. He had seen it all before, how the clock exposed the frailty of human sanity, how it preyed upon the deepest recesses of the soul. For him, it was a symphony of terror, each victim's descent into madness, a note in a macabre composition. Clara's screams filled the room as the visions intensified, her body writhing in agony. She clawed at her face, trying to escape the horrors that only she could see. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. Clara collapsed to the floor, her eyes vacant and empty, her mind shattered. Edgar knelt beside her, his expression unchanged. "You see," he murmured, "time reveals all truths, even those we wish to remain hidden." The days that followed were a blur for Clara. She wandered the streets of Ravenswood, a shadow of her former self, the townsfolk avoiding her gaze. Edgar continued his work, the clock of shadows claiming yet another victim. But Edgar's own time was running out. One stormy night, a stranger arrived in town. A man named Ethan, who had heard whispers of the Watchmaker's dark exploits. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan entered the workshop, his resolve unshaken by Edgar's icy demeanor. "Mr. Blackwood," Ethan said, his voice steady, "I have come to end your reign of terror." Edgar's eyes narrowed. "You are welcome to try," he replied, gesturing toward the clock of shadows. "But be warned, it has broken stronger minds than yours." Ethan approached the clock, his heart pounding in his chest. He gazed into its face, and the world around him began to warp and twist. But Ethan was prepared. He had faced his fears before and emerged stronger. He steeled himself against the onslaught of visions, his mind a fortress against the tide of darkness. As the clock's power faltered, Edgar's calm facade began to crack. For the first time, he felt a glimmer of fear. Ethan reached into his coat and produced a small vial of holy water, smashing it against the clock's face. The glass shattered, and the room was filled with a blinding light. Edgar screamed as the light consumed him, his body writhing in agony. The clocks on the walls stopped, their tick-tock silenced. When the light faded, Edgar was gone, his workshop now a silent tomb. Ethan stood alone in the darkness, the weight of his victory heavy on his shoulders. He had broken the cycle of terror, but the scars of his battle would remain. As he left Ravenswood, he vowed to ensure that no other town would fall victim to such darkness. And so the workshop of Edgar Blackwood fell into ruin, a testament to the horrors that once lurked within. The townsfolk spoke of him in whispers, a cautionary tale for those who dared to seek the truth. Behind the tick-tock of a clock. Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Turn on notifications and tell us what you thought of the video. And as always, be careful of what's around you.